All right. Party people in the place to be, vandals, and everybody else lurking out there in the darkness. This is a brand new episode of How Do We Get Here? It's a very big, kind of a special episode. We have a very, very illustrious guest with us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm also like blown away by your opening graphic. I'm like, I want a copy of that. Like that's amazing.
We could send it to you, no problem.
Yeah, we get that all the time. Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm just like, holy shit, this is like the best promo piece I've ever seen for my work.
I should use it more often to like promote the episode.
Oh,
Usually we just put up the thumbnail. Because sometimes I only put like today, I've been busy the last week or so. I kind of slapped it together after work today. So, you know.
I feel like you get marketing work doing it. Like that thing's awesome. Thanks. So thanks. What an amazing intro.
It's our pleasure, man. We try to make it as fun as possible for our guests. So,
gotcha.
And I mean, like tonight, like I'm not sure if you need an introduction, man, but like, yeah, we have Sean Lewis, like the Sean Lewis. I've been reading you for quite a while. I discovered you with The Few.
Yeah.
And it was kind of quite an adventure, man. Like I a lot of mixed feelings, emotions in that book. It's very powerful stuff. It's kind of something I miss from Image. They're not really doing like books that raw and heavy anymore, in my opinion. And like they're definitely not taking chances with art like Hayden's in that, you know what I mean? Kind of like that really punk rock look to it. You know what I mean? Like I love it. And also I love your work with him. You kind of see his evolution as a artist, you know what I mean? It got a lot better on Thumbs, and then by the time you guys did Above Snakes, the guy is damn near like a pro, you know what I mean? It's glorious. So that evolution was really neat to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, Hayden's unreal. Part of that is just like really dumb luck. In terms of the Image side, like you kind of come as full teams. So like I found Hayden on a Facebook page, like on a Boom Comics open submission page that I think no one was monitoring. And was scrolling, just like scrolling through like endless art samples, and Hayden's came up, and I was like, holy shit, what is this? And Hayden was like still in school. I reached out to them and was like, hey, I'd like to do a book. I got this other book at Image. And Hayden was just like, yeah, I'm like a senior. I guess I could fit it in between my thesis. I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Hey, he's that young, really?
Wow.
Hayden was that young. Yeah, Hayden was in their last school of undergrad at RISD, at Rhode Island School of Design.
So what was like he was like, oh, comics, okay, or because he was like going to art school, right? Or was he like really stoked and like this is a great opportunity, or how was, like you said, like he's like, oh, I could do it in between my thesis or whatever. So
no, he didn't want to do comics.
He did,
yeah. I think that they were the only ones that were like focused on, one of the few within Hayden's class that was focusing on illustration, like, and specific
illustration. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the samples that I saw, like Hayden was already submitting themselves to like directly to Boom, and it was all panels. It was sequentials.
Wow.
So like, and it actually helped inform the few, because some of the drawings, I remember one of the drawings had a motorcycle in it, and I was like, I don't know what I'm writing for you, but it's going to have a motorcycle.
At one point,
yeah. The edginess of it, I was like, I'm going to figure out how this fits your style, and we can make hopefully a really cool book together.
Damn. So like, imagine being a student, and then you get a phone call being like, yo, I've got this book that I'm writing for Image. Like that'll be
third
like
big
comic, it's like, holy shit,
definitely makes those stalker conversations easier. Because I met Hayden I found Hayden on the same page as Caitlin Yarsky, who I also did a couple of books with.
Yeah.
They were both on the same Boom page. And so they were basically like within the same week, I think I was writing each of them going, hey, I was doing this book called Saints, and I was like, I've got this book called Saints at Image. It's finishing up, and like as soon as it's done, I'd love to do something with either of you. And both of them luckily respond back, and they're like, I know Image. And then I basically sent them writing samples of like, here's what I wrote up something for them that would be like the first issue for each of them, and it was The Few and Coyotes. And I was just like, here, like, does it hit? And both of them, I was lucky enough that they were like, yeah, this sounds like it might be fun. So So it was really serendipitous. I also don't know who wasn't monitoring the Boom page at that time, because like
they be slipping. Like, yeah, because you created 2 icons of the scene by sniping them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Themselves. I was lucky enough, and I think smart enough, to notice how good they already were.
Oh yeah.
You know, like their work just jumped out. Like on a Facebook page, I was just like, that shit's amazing and different than everybody else. I mean, I think that's something I've always been drawn to, though, a little bit, is like art that's a little bit maybe not mainstream yet, but is so efficient or does something so special. Like Hayden, I've always been blown away by how they're able to make a 2-dimensional page feel kinetic. Like there's just energy and movement in the way that the sequentials are laid out and done. Yeah. And then with Caitlin, like her acting, like the faces and eyes of her characters and like how emotive it is, I'm like, it's just is another, you know, like both of them, I'm like, oh, not a lot of people can do these things, you know? So that's where I was just like, all right, I got to figure out a way to work with you. I mean, most of my career has been that when I've met an incredibly good artist, I'm just going like, how do I make a book with you? Because I think you're special.
But you have a background as a playwright and like theater. Yes. So you must have a way of communicating creatively with someone, because you already work in a very visual field, right? Sure. So that must help you like communicate with the artist on what you want to see and help them see your vision, right? Because you made your own play, so you kind of directed and stuff like that as well, right?
100%. I mean, most of my theater career was writing and directing. And yeah, I think I approach making comics the same way as making a play. Like I try, a lot of theater is casting, right? Like for all roles, you're like, who's the best set designer? Who's the best actor? And once you've got them, like trying to go like, this tonally is where we're going. And like, if you have a problem, like I'll try and help on this of creating like clarity. But if you get really good people, part of what you can do is just go like, what do you want to do? Here's what I want to do. And now I'll get out of your way and you can get out of, and we'll get out of each other's, and we'll come back together when we have something special.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a big thing, is like, I don't know, I would encourage it to more people writing for comics. I think sometimes people get into comics on the writing side. You know, we all grew up with the legends, like Alan Moore and you know, like
Frank Miller,
Frank Miller, like these huge writers, you know, who you go like, oh, I have to be Alan, I have to be, you know, I have to be these monoliths, which I think sometimes it creates like, you know, it can create imitation, but it can also create like a weird kind of auteur complex. Like I need to be in control of everything so that my story gets out, where I'm like, you can't draw it, so it's not your story. If it's a book, it's your story. But like once you've invited an artist in, they invariably are going to make things that you never imagined for the story.
Leave their footprint or their imprint on it. Yeah.
100%. I think like seeing that as like a kind of beautiful thing that can improve the work, as opposed to, I know I've seen some people and I've seen friends of mine who are artists have trouble in collaborations at times, because it's like, it's almost like what they do is seen as a detriment. Like there's a level of like, you're fucking up my story. And it's like, like you, or maybe you're not using them in the best way. Like you're not communicating in a way where what they're incredible at can shine.
But I think like you nailed it. It's maybe a writer that's used to working just from the writing side and never really had to collaborate with other people in a sense, like a novelist, right? They have their editors, this or that, and they'll have like, you know, the proofreading, but it's little tweaks that they make you do. But to actually, like you say, hand your story over completely to another person and let them interpret the whole thing visually is a whole nother ball game, right?
And you're truly gonna make it. Like, I don't know. I mean, I know that's maybe I'll get kicked out of the comic writers group for it, but like I think everyone says that knows that. Like the artist is the one who actually makes the book. You know, like at the end of the day, like the pages that they come up with, you're like, oh, I never thought of the panel like that, or that character appearing there, and then but you did. Now, like I deal with it, or it improves it, or invariably both, right? Like, yeah, it's weird when writers try to dictate fully to artists. I feel like it's a strange I don't know.
At that point, become a cartoonist. You know what I mean? And just
Yeah. I feel like you're getting in your own way at that point. Is it's
Yeah.
like you're not going to get the best result doing this.
Yeah, and we've talked to quite a few writers, and they've told us like, "Oh, the artist got back to me, and they had this idea," where
Oh,
it keeps the same spirit, but kind of modify it just a little bit for the pace, maybe because if you're not used to working in sequential art, right? There's like you say, it's not the same as let's say a movie with cuts, sound, the editing, and so the pacing's a little different, right? And as someone who draws or works in like you say, two dimensional, and it's static images moving, sometimes you got to change something to give it that, like you said, like Hayden, like his art was energetic, almost like there was motion in it and coming off the page, right? And like maybe he has a few suggestions. Oh, if we do this, it won't change the story, but it's just little tweaks and it'll
right.
just make the book that much better. So
100%. And I mean, yeah, like also when you can create that much kinetic energy in a book, like The Few has some of my favorite pages of The Few are like these double page spreads where like it's completely still because so much energy and emotion's been created for like 100 pages that a death happens. And then you have like 3 or 4 pages where it's just stillness. It hits in a new way. You're like, I've gotten used to this rhythm and now it's a really heavy break. And it's like, that's a brilliant thing that Hayden brings to the table. And then honestly, the best thing I can do is go like when Hayden's like, what's the text for the page? It's like, fuck that. Like, it doesn't need to.
The image, it speaks for itself.
The image is so strong. Like the decision's already so good. So like, why tinker with it?
Yeah. And it just adds to the, like you said, like it's a quiet page. So if there's no text or anything, it just reinforces that idea of stillness and like the moment, right? Where
and his art with limited color just really invokes the starkness of a post-apocalyptic landscape. I mean, like it is I don't know, kind of terrifying in some of the landscapes that he draws. Like I really dig it. He's kind of like got an evil what's his name, Jeff Lemire going on in this book.
I just am still amazed when I look back on it that like Hayden's 22 drawing that book.
And it's a thick book. Like the issues were all oversized, right? And they
were all over 50 pages, which was not a super popular idea at the time.
I
loved it. Yeah, I love more to read.
I love that too. Like we just had Darcy on, and he just released Precious Metal, and his are the thicker ones, and we're like, Ultra Mega 2 was the thicker book. And
European style,
and we're like, we love it. Like, and like originally they were saying, oh, we're gonna make just normal the normal floppy size with the page count, but he's like, it just didn't work for the story. And we're like, no, man, like obviously the price point's gonna be a little higher, but you have more pages, right? So anyway, I prefer getting more story in one sitting than having to wait a month.
I will tell you this much too, as an inside thing on it. If you're buying an indie book that's oversized, the creators are giving up a good amount of their back end to make sure that the book comes out the way that they want it. Like it's just more expensive to do it once you start crossing over 30 and into 40 or more pages.
Okay.
And like it becomes a thing, like Jonathan, like with Bear Pirate, that was a big question that we kept going back on, is like, we knew it was a weird book. So we were like, how do we get people to buy it? We knew it was going to be oversized and it was weird. And that's where it was like, we have to make this as cheap as it possibly can be before it automatically loses money. That's where you go like, well, $5, it's 72 pages. $5 seems.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. I mean, in comparison to some other oversized books on the stands, that became like our kind of mantra for it, is like, how do you make it affordable? Which honestly was a big Todd McFarlane thing. Like Todd talked about that all the time with Spawn. It's just like, how do you make it so that a teenager who's got a part-time job is like, yeah, I can pick that up every month. I like that thing.
True enough. Yeah. And speaking of the Bear Pirate Viking Queen, issue 2 just dropped last week or the week before?
Last week. Yeah.
Last week.
Wednesday.
Yeah. Issue 2 just dropped. Issue 1 was fantastic.
Thanks.
Johnny and I haven't been to the comic shop yet, so we haven't had a chance to pick up issue 2, but we loved the first issue. It was good stuff.
I appreciate it. John's a beast.
Yeah, definitely, man. His art really gives a
Yeah,
beautiful tone to the story.
It
I
reminds
mean,
me of old Vertigo, man, like old John J. Muth style,
dude,
Kent Williams, like when those guys were like ruling the little McKeever-ish too, you know what I mean? Yeah, I love that
you
era.
just
So
named like all of John's top like
influence
influences when we
favorites.
started talking about the book and what it would look like and how he wanted to approach it, like all Kent Williams, like all of those names are names that he was throwing at me on a regular basis. And I think the whole idea of making, I mean, I grew up reading like Vertigo books. So I feel like every time I make a book, I'm kind of just trying to connect with like those books I was obsessed with as a kid. So I mean, that's the most we can hope for. I mean, that was definitely the goal as we were going through it.
oh, you nailed it, and it's definitely something that's refreshing for, like, fantasy on shelves because it's, realistic enough to be, like, a cool, like, historical thing, while also having that fantasy tinge to it with the bear companion, you know what I mean? And, like, the elusive Viking on the ship, you know what I mean? It's a really rad book, man. I can't wait to see where it goes, and with your style, I'm pretty sure it's not gonna disappoint.
I hope not. We'll see. I don't know. Comics are. I mean, it's a fun. It's fun to experiment and play in comics. I feel very lucky that I've gotten to do the things I've gotten to do. So
It would make a badass movie, man. I think, like, you should probably try to show it to, like, Nicholas Winding Refn. I think, like, and have him direct it, like, kind of like a Valhalla Rising sequel type thing, man.
I showed it to my agent. He was like, "You're out of your mind." So to get past him, it feels like first. But
Oh, it would make a killer film. I could see it like maybe one of those A24 kids really knocking out of the park too. You know what I mean? It's got that.
Definitely see like a Rob Eggers version of it would be like incredible. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Weird things get optioned and made into stuff all the time. I mean, it wasn't something we were thinking about when we were doing it, but I mean, I'm sure we also wouldn't say no to the option. The option is always a nice bonus money.
Because if you look at like if it gets optioned, you could just look at films like was it The Green King? Was that what it was called?
Green Knight.
The Green Knight or The Northman. Like it definitely would fall into the same, like the vibe of it would definitely fall into the same category as those films, and those were really well received. And so it's not completely unheard of to tell this type of story.
Of course not. It just takes someone being obsessed with something. Honestly, like that's how a lot of those things get made. It's just someone's obsessed with, the Green Knight and that fable, and is like, yeah, I want to spend 5 years of my life working on a movie.
Or it even brought me way back to my childhood when Excalibur came out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it definitely made me think of that movie a little bit too, like yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Kind of talking about this level of stuff. Do you have any intentions of dipping your toes back into Celtic folklore? Because probably my favorite book of yours is Clan Killers, and you did my people proud with that, man. That book knocked it out of the park with the Celtic mythology, and I would love to see more of that from you.
I appreciate that. I'm first generation Irish, so I grew up in a house full of Irish dudes and ladies. So like all of that stuff's pretty ingrained. I mean, I'd love to. I mean, or different eras of Ireland I'd be interested in going through. I think if the opportunity comes up, it's funny. Antonio Fuso, who drew that book, is working on House of Slaughter right now. We've been talking about, it's been a long time since we've worked together, and we've been like, yeah, we should probably do another book together. So yeah, I mean, there's always the possibility of that. That's a deep cut, though. I appreciate that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I've actually like tried to get everybody I know to like review that book. We did it on an earlier episode of the show. I forced all the guys to read it, and they all ended up loving it. I'm like, you guys like this? And they're like, oh, I don't know about this book, though. I'm like, check it out. It's the shit.
It's definitely a very different book than The Few. I don't know if the smartest thing for my career has been that each book is so wildly different than the last, but it's just been kind of how it's gone.
I think it's refreshing, man. I kind of don't like. I mean, like I like people that kind of stay in the same lane, but at the same time, I kind of get bored with them. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I don't want to spit on. I love their work, but like when Brubaker and Phillips put out "Where the Body Was," that was such a breath of fresh air because I was so getting just so tired of like just how they were ramping up the violence so much, and I don't know, and their stuff was getting so samey, and then they put out Where the Body Was, and it's just kind of this cute neighborhood drama, you know what I mean, with a dead body in it, and I'm just like, well, that was perfect, man. You guys like really won me back, you know, with that one, and I like that about you, you know what I mean? Like you said, you went from The Few to Coyotes, and like, yeah, they were so, it was like almost a breakneck type of change up, but like it really showed me that like you were talented, you know what I mean? You weren't just the guy that like, oh, I'm gonna make post-apocalyptic, you know, depressing books all the time, which I mean, like, I'm not saying that in a bad way, but The Few, like, you were trying to invoke, you know, the road and like, you know what I mean, like those type of stories, and you like nailed it. It's pretty grim, you know what I mean, like in a good way. I'm not. I know these words are usually.
No, man, you know, I go with that. It's a very dark, or not even dark. Yeah, that's a sad world.
A grim, yeah.
It's pretty sad.
And Coyotes is pretty sad too, but I mean, like the action's ramped up in it, and you got like really quirky characters like this girl, you know what I mean? And
we were both, Kayla and I were talking a lot about Tank Girl. Like when we were talking about the girl, the rest of the women, I was just like, she really liked Tank Girl, I really like Tank Girl, and I was like, can we make it have that kind of feeling and fun and kind of wackiness within this very kind of like to try and lighten the darkness of the rest of that universe, which was great. I mean, Kate was great at that. I mean, Kate's amazing. They're both amazing artists in their like everything they do. So I'm just like, yeah, it was quite a pleasure to work with both.
Yeah. So I think the first book I read of yours was Bliss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then Johnny was like, "Oh, you like that? If you like Sean Lewis, you'll probably like the Clan Killers." So then I read that, and then Above Snakes came out, so I put that on my pull, and I loved Above Snakes. That made my 2022 best of list. I really enjoyed that story. That was fantastic. The art, the choice of colors, it was great. Like seeing a Western be as bright and vibrant as that, as opposed to a muted, dusty kind of all like beige tones. It was such a wonderful story. Like I loved it, and visually, the pacing was great. The characters were fantastic. Such great, fun, interesting characters in it, and man, I just loved it. And I'm not a Western type guy.
Me neither.
I was like, so I was like, fuck it, I'm putting it on my poll, and I did not regret it. Like I love that.
I think that's you know, it's funny. We were warned that Westerns can be tough when we were doing it. And the truth of the matter is, I'm not a Western guy. That came about because like every time I'd finish, like each time I'd finished a book with Hayden, I would immediately go like, what do you want to work on next? Or like, what kind of a thing? And it was after Thumbs that Hayden was like, I'd really like to do a Western. And I was like, all right, let's do a Western. And as soon as we got off like the phone call, I was like, fuck. I don't know shit about Westerns. I don't watch them. It's never been a thing that's like spoken heavily to me. And then I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna fucking do this. And then I mean, really, it became me just going like, well, just embrace it, embrace the things you don't like about it, like some of the tropes of it, and see what that becomes, and then just try and double down on like what's Dirt's deal. So I was thinking a lot about like, honestly, I was thinking a good amount about Ennis when I was working on it.
Yeah.
I'd been reading Punisher Max and Preacher a lot. And yeah, I was just like, okay, like just have some fun. And I just started thinking about older comics, like the beginnings and the endings became really important for me, of like having Dr. Tomb as like this narrator, being able to open and close each issue with like this weird monologue, you know,
it's such a fun, strange character too, to be telling the story, like to be narrating, to open it up to like the villain, right? Narrating the story. It was fantastic. I loved it, man. It was great. And like you say, with the fur collar, such visual, like a great character design. The book, I mean, fantastic, you know?
100%. No, Hayden's a dynamo. I mean, honestly, that book breaks my heart only because I would have gladly, I think we were both at the start of it. We got moved a lot because of COVID. Because when we first started, our plan was to try and make it an ongoing. Like the idea was like, how long, once I had written a couple of the single, like a lot of the issues worked as self-contained stories. And so once I had written like 2 or 3 of them, I was like, this could go on a long time. Like I have a lot of weird, funny ideas that we could do in this book. And we were excited for it. And then we solicited before COVID and then had to move it and then move it again. And our orders just were really not great. It was a weird book where like we picked up audience as the book came to its end.
Okay, yeah.
Trade did well, but like it was hard. It's a really tricky thing with modern comics is like,
did you have the same problem with Bliss? Because Bliss came out during the pandemic too. And it seems to me, I think
there was a break between the issues, right?
There's 4 or 5 issues came out. Then all of a sudden there's like this break. And I think it was because of the shutdown or something like that. Everything came to a halt. And then it was
the
like
last issue came out, right? Yeah.
Something like that.
No, very much. We had the 4 issues come out, and then there was maybe it was, or was it 5? We had the first set of issues come out, and then there was a breakup, and then we didn't come back for a few months, which is also hard on a book, you know. So like, just getting that audience and retaining it past the first issue or the first 2 or 3 issues is like,
especially for a monthly book too, right? You get like, and if it wasn't an expected break, like, because then it's not scheduled properly where people know.
That's reading Image, though. Image books just do that, though, to tell you.
But usually it's like you have your 5-issue arc. Then you know there's that month or 2 break. Then it picks up again. Well, this was supposed to run 8 straight, right?
Yes.
So
and then it broke down. So both books ended up taking kind of hits, and so it becomes like that becomes a really hard. I don't know, but I also know I'm not alone in it. Like there's a lot of great books that friends of mine write, and I know they'll have fans of it who are just like, why didn't you go longer? And it's like at a certain point it becomes not profitable, and you're like, what do you do? You stay on the not profitable book, or do you move to the next idea?
Yeah, because at Image, you guys still have to pay for most of your production, right? The creators, like it's creator owned, but like it's also creator funded. Like if you guys aren't getting enough to keep it going, like
well, it gets, I think a lot of writers would stay on because we can work on like 15 things, right?
Yeah.
Like where it's really unfair and impossible is with the artists, you know, because an artist, they're committing so much when they do a book.
Time,
They're basically saying like, for the next 1.5 to 2 years, this is the only thing I'm working on. So the moment it becomes unprofitable, I think every writer knows, they're like, no pressure from me. Like you have to go find work that's gonna, you know, make up that difference for you, you know. And it's just kind of tiered in ways, because sometimes books can get saved by the trade sales, sometimes books can be saved or become profitable because of the trade or international sales if the licenses get bought. But by that point, the book stopped. You know, by the time that money comes in, you're like, oh, we no longer are doing the book. So it's heartbreaking in some way.
Well, it's sad that so much is tied to floppies when like the market is kind of changed. There's a lot of, like, I hate to say I'm kind of a bad fan. I'm a trade waiter, man. I love reading the chunk, you know what I mean? And I would love to buy issue to issue for everything, but it's kind of not affordable for me, like, to tell you the truth. And the trade, it's just a better option all around. And I think that most books should wait till the first trade comes out, see how it sells before they tell people to pack their bags, you know, or wrap it up. You know what I mean?
And the truth is, Image doesn't tell anyone to pack their bags. It's really the teams. It's the artistic team. Other publishers say pack your bags.
Yeah.
Image, it's really you make the decision where you're like, and you can see the writing on the wall. You know it is. If you've done a book there, by the time you get your order numbers for the following month, you're like, and if you know your price point, you're like, oh, we're not profitable anymore. Like we've dipped into where we're not going to make any money until the trade. That's when it gets dangerous, because if it happens while you're in mid-run, you're really fucked. If it happens around the last or second to last issue, you're like, okay, hopefully we've made enough off of the first half of the run to cover.
Yeah, I am the kind of guy that will get the number 1 and maybe the number 2 if it's got a sweet cover. And then trade away to the rest.
I think that's most audience, honestly. I think everyone's trying to figure out that problem. Like, honestly, like I think all the publishers.
I really wish that like the graphic novel would catch on in America. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why it's not a viable thing. They've tried it several times to launch it, and it just never catches. And it is the best way to read a comic, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree. I would love. Look, Jonathan and I talk about this. Like, we would have loved to have done Bear Pirate the way Brubaker and Phillips do Reckless. You know, like European style hardcover that you picked up the day it came out and like at a good price point. But like Ed and Sean, they've been working together. They have an audience they've built over like 25 years. So like with Jonathan, you know, we're both like, this is our first book together. We don't even know if we know how to work together yet, let alone the audience deciding like, yeah, that is something I want. So it's
you do, man. That naval battle, like the trap. Oh, that was just so well rendered, man. That was like one of the coolest things I've seen in a comic in a long time. And I'm not really into pirate shit, to tell you the truth. And I'm
not either.
Yeah, me too. That was like, I said it when we did our Hot Flashes episode. I said, it's like pirate. I was like, Bear, okay. Pirate, I was like, I don't know. Then I was like, Viking, okay. Queen, I don't know what the Queen's about, but I was like, whatever, let's give it a go.
Right. Maybe I should start writing things that I like, that I'm not also going like, I don't know if I like pirate.
But I mean, maybe it gets a fresh take, because you're coming at it from a whole different angle, not as a fan, right? So you avoid all those like little tropes maybe that people use for a pirate story, or you know, like you come at it from a different angle. So maybe it's a little fresher, a little more original.
Yeah, the idea that the captain knows that like he's rotten and he's a kind of a dick and a piece of shit, but like and he kind of wants to be better, but like I really like the way you like wrote him. You know what I mean? It's kind of different than the typical like I be the badass. You know what I mean? Like he had character. You know, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, like all the characters probably have a little bit like too much self-hate. I feel like most characters I write have a little bit of like, oh, what am I doing? Why is this my life? What the fuck did I do wrong? But yeah.
He should listen to the Bear, though, man. Like he's inviting his own demise, I think, by not listening to the Bear. Like,
I think people should listen to the Bear. I think that's good advice. The Bear's very smart.
That's why his name comes first on the title.
Yeah. There's an order. There's an order to all of this.
Yeah.
So, like writing soda license stuff, man. Like, how is your reign on the Spawn? Like, do you get like full control of that, or does Todd kind of tell you what to do, or like?
It's a mix. You know, we would have like a big session every couple of months between like, it would be like Rory, who writes Spawn, and then myself and Todd and Thomas Healy, who's the editor. And we would kind of just talk about like, where do we think each book is going the next couple of months? And then, you know, Todd would jump in. Todd was aware of everything that was happening book by book. But for the most part, you were given a good amount of freedom with the plots. Once you kind of talked about it and got an okay, where Todd was like, oh, and it was never like insanely nuanced. It would be like, I think in this, he's going to go for the throne and this is what's going to happen with it. And Todd would be like, sounds cool. Great. And, you know, and Todd was actually an amazing resource at times, because in Kingspawn, I was bringing back a lot of older characters. So
yes.
The good thing with that is like, I could contact Todd and go like, what does this guy do? I don't remember what this guy does. And Todd would be able to give like an entire encyclopedic history of, you know, any of the characters that I threw his way. I think a lot of times he was like, why are you bringing, like, how many of these guys are you bringing back? I was like, I think all of them. So, but yeah, so that was kind of a really cool experience of just like how to work within a licensed property in that sense. So yeah, Todd was definitely overseeing, but there was a lot of freedom within that.
Like an old school bullpen type thing, kind of like how you hear like the old Kirby days were and shit. Yeah,
which I fantasize about. I mean, that's all I ever actually wanted out of comics, I think, was to work in the bullpen and have like the artists and a couple of writers, and we all get lunch together and talk shit. Like, that sounds amazing to me. I wish it existed.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Well, where they all actually like worked in the office, man. Like they went there and made the comics there. You know what I mean?
So like, that's the thing. I was reading there's an oral history of Wildstorm comics that I got a copy of a book of.
Okay.
And I was reading that, and it's amazing because it's all just stories of them hanging out at the Wildstorm offices, and like J. Scott Campbell is like doing this, and like it's just it makes you feel like you're there for a moment. And I'm like, yeah, man, this is all I fucking actually think.
Rest in peace, man. I love that imprint so much.
Oh, they were great.
I'll never forgive Jim Lee, kind of, you know, for for selling it to DC and just folding it, man. Like, oh, some of my favorite books ever. You know what I mean? Ex Machina, the Planetary. You know what I mean? Like all of that, so good.
Yeah, some amazing titles, but also like an amazing feeding ground for so many great artists and writers. Like so many of those people are still around doing great work. Like that's also one of the big things is like, where do you get the feeder areas for artists coming up is like is always a big question, you know, like.
Well, back then it was kind of like watch what Vertigo's putting out, and now I think it was Image, but like now I think it's kind of Kickstarter. You know what I mean? A lot of those kids are just coming up fast. You know what I mean? And showing a lot of potential right off the bat. I mean, like our buddy Jordan Thomas, man. Like I knew he was going to make it, and like he's got his Weird Work book came out at Image. He's got a bunch of stuff popping off at Oni. Really proud of that guy. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's kind of like there's a lot of stories like that. You know what I mean? And I'm not sure like where it's going to keep coming from, but
I mean, Kickstarter is great in that sense. Like, I mean, in all senses, I love anything that gives people the ability to make a book without a gatekeeper is so tantamount. Like it's a necessary thing, you know. Like I just always think about like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like those two guys just fucking at a table, like
passing it back and forth, yeah,
back and forth and stapling it and just be like, yeah, we're done. Send the shit out. Like I'm like, oh, how I romanticize it. I'm sure, sure it's not that romantic. It wasn't that fun of an experience, but
I don't know. Like you think now with like because of the internet and social media and how we interact with people. And I remember back in school, like you said, you're in a group and you get so much more when you're in the energy around the people when you're creating and just how much you feed off each other. You don't get that same energy through an email. You do a little bit, but it's not that same vibe, that same, I don't know, back in like you lose a little bit like through digital communication. Yeah.
Because also there's a matter of seeing the work in progress. Like you can only, everyone's thumbnails are wildly different. Like some artists' thumbnails are like it's very clear what the book will look like, and some you're like, I have no fucking idea if that's a person. Like I don't know. You know, and like even I'll ask, I'm like, is that Spawn? And it'll be like, yeah, that's Spawn. He's in the front. I'm like, all right, it's a circle.
Yeah.
You just kind of pull. You go like, I think I can envision what you're talking about. Where like, I mean, that was one thing. Jonathan Baravecchia actually he lives a mile away from me. So like the whole time during Bear Pirate, we would just get together. So it was the closest to a bullpen where I would just like go over to his house or vice versa, and I'd be able to see the art and then respond to the art in real time. We're going like, oh, you're doing that on that page, then I can kind of plan ahead for this other thing.
Yeah.
That was great. And I think I also envy it in terms of like the energy / competition / like resource of having other writers and artists in a room together sounds great to me. Like if you're all working on different books and being able to like just talk to somebody else about like, yeah, I have them doing this, but it seems like I've seen it before. And then like just having someone to bounce shit off of is huge.
Like a sounding board, you know, like,
you know, I long for that. I always assume that everyone else, like there's times like I have like I know Matt Rosenberg very slightly. Like we've DM'd each other. I've been on his podcast, but I'm always like, I wonder if all those writers in New York like get together in a room and write together. Like I get envious and build an entire scenario that I'm not a part of. Here comes that.
Yeah. Well, you told us a funny story before we went live about just how comics brought you together, because another friend of the show, Patrick Kidlin, came on and he's like, yeah, you guys should reach out to Sean Lewis and see if and Johnny are like, well, yeah, we love his work. And he's like, I'm sure he'd be perfect to come on your show and just chat. And like, I was like, all right, man. So I'll try for it. So then I reached out and you were like, yeah, man, let's do it. So it was funny, that story you told us, how like you guys live right next to each other and you didn't even know.
We lived in Albany. I don't live in Albany anymore, neither does Patrick, but yeah, we were at New York Comic Con and out for drinks with Eric Stevenson and a couple of other image creators, like Kyle Higgins was there and Declan Shavli, and we're just kind of talking. At one point Eric just was like, hey, you guys like live right next to each other, and me and Patrick were like, we do? Like, I don't even know you. like who? I don't think Patrick and I knew each other's work even. We were just kind of like, who are you? And then he was just, yeah, I live in Albany. I was like, I live in Albany too. So yeah, and then we would just meet up every once in a while at the there's like a vegan, like a food co-op that we would get to comics. Patrick like knows everything that's going on in comics at all times. So it was actually like, it was like the only way I'd learn what was going on in comics is I'd sit down with Patrick for like 2 or 3 hours and just laugh as he would tell me like, so this is what's going on, and this publisher did that, and I'd be like, oh shit, okay. Sometimes I'm maybe outside of it, but
I don't think he's as plugged in as maybe he used to be, but he's still kind of, I think he keeps up a bit.
Travels are insane. I don't know how he could keep up. I wouldn't be able to keep up with shit. But
yeah,
in his band and living in Australia, I'm like, man, I don't know how you keep up on anything.
The first time we had him on, he was literally about to go on tour. It was midnight, and like he was going to go on
the next
tour the next morning. And at that time, he was about to launch Stringer and 3 other books.
Stringer's great. That's that's an under talked about book. I like that book a lot.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. He showed us a new one that he's got that's about curling, and I can't wait to read the whole thing because we just got a sample of it. I'm just like, a crime drama about curling, dude. Like, oh, dude, I'm so there for it because your tennis one was great.
Yeah, no, also just Patrick is just like so himself. It's like I really admire it. Like he's just like, this is what I think, this is who I am, and here it is. And you're just,
and he gets a very unwarranted reputation too, right? For it, like I've when he came on, I looked up and stuff, and like all these articles like controversial punk band guy, like front man, and then like
he's got some hot takes. He talks a little shit on the show. The first episode, he kind of had some unkind words for Marvel and a certain guy that was writing big for him. But it was funny too. You know what I mean? Like
he's not saying anything that not a lot of us aren't thinking, So
I've never found Patrick to be mean-spirited.
No,
I mean, I'll say that I don't agree with Patrick all the time.
He speaks his truth. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, 100%. He speaks his truth, and it's never mean-spirited. I've never taken it as like he's talking to like degrade or downplay someone.
No.
Like, I mean, also when you're in a business, there's always gossip and takes and things that companies and other people are doing, and everyone has opinions on them. Most just don't say them. Patrick definitely says some of them out loud a little bit more than I do or would. But I also am like, I guess that's the thing that I've always kind of taken with him is I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with him on some of this shit, but like, I don't think it's mean-spirited. And I know it's his honest opinion. I know it's not a front of any kind. So I always appreciate that.
I think it comes from a place of good intention.
He loves comics.
Yeah,
like that guy loves comics. Like
he says it to try to better.
Like I agree. I do think a lot of times it's like, I mean, because he's another one where like he's out on tour with his punk band, and the first place he goes, it seems like all the time, is like anywhere they have old back issues, and he pulls it and shares them on his newsletter of like, look at this panel. And I'm like, this dude clearly adores the form, like I don't think he's trying to destroy it in any.
And the cool thing is he doesn't write the same type of comics that all the rest of the punk rock guys do. He doesn't just do like a Grant Morrison impersonation. Like I love a lot of the other guys' work, but like that's kind of what a lot of them just do. You know what I mean? And like Patrick, he's like, no, I'm gonna do a noir book about a guy that strings tennis rackets and sells cocaine. You know what I mean? And that's not like a typical thing you think a punk rock guy would write about.
I dig his, because he did that other one too, Lighted Gasoline. That's like that black and white book.
Yeah,
his crime stuff I love. I mean, I think Patrick's very talented. But his crime stuff especially, I'm like, I like Stringer a lot. So
yeah, so did we.
Crime drama is kind of my favorite form of comic right now. Kind of just like really speaks to me, and I love the way like you see it, read the same kind of story over and over again, but like just the different variations that people do on it. I just find it fascinating, the form of noir and the crime drama.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the constraints allow for really fascinating new things to come out, right? Like, because it's like, oh, there's these specific things that make it a crime drama or a noir, but then when people reinvent it in like their own voice, it becomes like, it really does become new, which is like, it's such a funny magic trick. But
yeah. Which you can kind of do with the Western too, when people really try, like you and Hayden did. Like once again, like back to Above Snakes. Like that one's pretty much another Vertigo book in my opinion. You know what I mean? You guys really hit that back into that feels. For me when I was reading that, like really kind of felt like old Karen Berger would have given it the stamp of approval and published it.
I would have loved that. I mean, that book was a joy. I mean, all the books are a joy. They're fucking comic books. I mean, if they're not a joy, it's a real problem.
But you got the great back and forth, the banter between him and the bird.
Yeah,
like that really that really gave the story continued momentum. Because you got some great banter back and forth, and gave a little bit of that little touch of comic relief that the book needed. That little bit of levity, like just so that it wasn't too heavy. It was perfect. Perfect.
And I think you're pretty good at that all around, man. Like Coyotes, you like really did a different take on the werewolf story and like kind of tied it into things that were going on in the news and the world at the time, with the Me Too movement and stuff. I thought it was really powerful for the time. And kind of actually the book came out kind of before all that was happening, you know what I mean? You kind of a perfect time for that. And then like you back to Clan Killers, like you really took the Celtic myths and stuff and you like injected it with Finola's, little revenge tale and like really kicked all that in the ass. So I think you kind of got a knack for it, bro.
Thanks. I like teams are fun to write. I feel like having people who can bounce off of each other and call each other out on shit is always, I mean, that was a big thing even with the King Spawn run, was making sure that Terry came back and was like that there could be someone who could actually call out Al at times.
Yeah.
Like otherwise I had struggles with like, how do you deal with an all-powerful character who doesn't give a shit about the other people's feelings around him? Like he's in charge and the most important thing. So it was like, we need somebody here who can be like, don't be a dick. Like, I know you can kill me up. Like, like that's important because in real life, I think, I don't know. I know I need that. I know most of the guys I know need that. They need a guy who checks them a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. Too much.
Not too much, but just enough to keep you honest, right?
Yeah, there's always someone who goes too
not to completely destroy your you as a person, but just to keep your feet firmly on the ground. Not bury you 6 feet under.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed, like, I read like the beginning of King Spawn, kind of like the first arc, but I really appreciated it because like it covered like my knowledge of like the original run of Spawn, because like I didn't read very much into it too, but like Billy Kincaid came back, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, cool, like I know who that is, like I'm not gonna have to Wikipedia a bunch of characters.
Right. Well, that's kind of where I was coming from on it. Like I had, I think, the first 12 or 13 issues of Spawn when it came out.
Yeah.
And so when I first started talking with Todd about it, I was just thinking about like the feeling I had when I bought those first issues, like what was exciting to me about it. So that became kind of the driving force. That, and also like I was really obsessed with the fact, I think one of the more brilliant things Todd's done with that book, and I don't even know if I used it to the degree I probably should have or wanted to, was like that book can become anything, which is kind of amazing. Like it's a war book and it's a superhero book and it's a horror book. And like, so if you want to do a whole horror run of 5 issues, like it's totally reasonable. If you want to do a war book, and I was just like, I don't know any other book that can do this in the same run. Like you could just consistently make the tone different, which I just always have loved about it. I just is like, it's so nuts.
And it's Yavi Fernandez is the artist on that.
Fernandez, yeah.
It's at the end of the splash page of issue 3 or 4, where he fights Cass. Is it Kincaid? And you get that panel at the end where he's like kind of coming back. Oh
yeah,
the dude did. Oh man, that splash page was just.
I've been very I've been very spoiled because I feel like all the artists I've gotten to work with are like incredible. And Javi also, like, I totally forgot about the vertical splash. I remembered it as a kid, but like I hadn't seen it a lot. And Javi did a ton of them in King Spawn. And I was always just like, oh my God, where have these been? These are like unreal, like just pin-up style. Oh, it's just such a dream.
90s comics done right, pretty much. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. So
how did that come to be? You working on King Spawn? Like, did Todd reach out to you? Did you pitch it to him, or
no? There's no way to reach out to Todd. Like, it's like I don't know how I would have gotten.
Bring a signed baseball, Sammy Sosa World Series.
No, Barry Bonds. I think he's the whole director now. Barry Bonds.
He reached out to me. I think on Eric Stevenson's suggestion. It had to do with thumbs. I think Stevenson they knew he was looking for a writer for King Spawn, was looking at a couple of different people, and then he was given, I believe Stevenson gave him thumbs. He read that, and then he called me one day. I'm not sure how he got my phone number. He called me because I didn't know who. It was one of the, like, you hear those kind of tropey stories all the time where it's like they call and I was like, yeah, it's my friend. It kind of was like that. Like I was at my parents' house in like on the Canadian border, phone rings, and she's like, hey, it's Tom McFarlane. I was just like, what? Like, what? Fuck that. Like, who? Yeah. Why would you be calling me? And it was just like, yeah, Red Thumbs want to talk to you. Like, and then it was kind of like a getting to know you period, because it was just like, what do you think about Spawn? What would you do? Like, what are your thoughts on Spawn? And I think for like a couple of weeks, we would talk on the phone like once or twice a week and kind of just throw around ideas. I did not know I was hired at that point. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I just knew that Todd called me. I would walk around town on my phone and we would just talk about like possible storylines for a Spawn book. And then at some point he said something to me that was like, okay, so you should probably not do that until issue 3. And I was like, I shouldn't? Like, am I writing this book? And he was like, yeah, what the fuck do you think we're doing?
Yeah, he's such a, like, you listen to him talk, and I mean, he's such a character himself, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, it was just like in his mind, he was like, of course you're writing it. Why would you be on the phone with someone this long?
Yeah.
And so yeah, then it just was like we went from that. Then once I knew, I was like, oh shit, okay, I'll actually write stuff then. And then we kind of just went right into it. Then Javi came on board after that. And yeah, then everything going towards the launch and all of that was kind of was very surreal. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's a very cool experience.
So right now you have Bear Pirate, Viking Queen. Issues 1 and 2 are out.
Yeah.
Monolith, the first issue came out. Is the second one out yet?
It comes out tomorrow, I think.
Tomorrow. So you have Monolith issue 1 and issue 2 drops tomorrow.
Right.
That's a 3-part series about the Goliath spawn, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, he's the giant Hulk-esque one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of echoing back to how he got to like Omega Island around Spawn 300. It's like the origin of how he came into that universe.
So you have those 3 books out. Because are you still writing King Spawn or
no? I'm not on King Spawn or Scorched anymore.
You're not on Scorched anymore either. Okay.
No. I left both books in the fall of like fall.
Okay. So you did about what, 20 issues on King Spawn?
I think 24,
25.
Good 2-year run. That's
a book. It's book in the 20s. I can't remember exactly how. 24 sounds right, but yeah, because it was like a full 2 year.
Yeah.
Run.
Yeah.
That's killer.
Yeah. I couldn't ask for, like it's a fucking surprise. So just like was no complaint on my end.
I mean, Todd knows what he's doing, because it made me hadn't picked up a Spawn book in forever, and your name was on it. The marketing was pretty good, so I was like, all signs pointed to yes, right? So bam, I went on my poll. I was like, I'll at least take the first 5 issues, get the first arc or so, 5, 6 issues, just to see what's up. And it was fun, man.
I'm gonna have to probably check out Scorched. I'm a big into female leads. I didn't know it was about a female Spawn. So
yeah, Spawn is basically the Captain America of like the team. Like she ends up kind of being the lead. She's got a lot of fans.
Usually they do. Yep.
But yeah, she's fun to write. So yeah, Scorch was fun, and it was also fun to do that because it's so much more of like a superhero book versus and like an old. I think that was part of it. Is I was like, if I'm doing 2 Spawn books, I want them to feel very different from each other. Again, I don't know if that was a good decision or not on my part, but I was like, Scorch should be like an old school 90s Image book, like tons of action and just like big over the top, like operatic. Where King Spawn, I was definitely more interested in like how can I get into more of who he is and what it is to like be all powerful but not have the things in life that you want to love and protect the most. Like that's so it was like, how do I just do this the 2 separate things?
And it had a tactical feel to it where you know, they're working as a team and like the intel.
That's where definitely I wanted to bring in. That's part of also why I wanted Terry in. Is I'm like I wanted to have more of like an honestly like an Ennis Punisher Max feel at times, like how they work together. But yeah.
So I know you're really busy. I don't know if you still lecture and stuff like that.
No, I used to teach at Skidmore College in New York, but I do not anymore.
Okay, so I know convention season's on. Have you been doing very many conventions? Do you have anything coming up? What's I
don't ever do conventions. I should, but I don't. I get really anxious and yeah, conventions are all I go occasionally. Yeah. No, there's no conventions
coming. Nothing coming up. Okay. No, I was just checking to make sure you didn't have like
no. There's some people who like
something coming up for that you wanted to plug or
a lot of people make full industries out of it. Like I have an agent for it, and they get very mad at me because they're always like,
yeah,
they do. Yeah, I'm just like I got a young son, and like I don't know if I can make it out to Utah or like
Well, they tried to book you though, right? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I've done a couple, and I try on Twitter to let people know when I do a convention because it's pretty rare. And I know people want, especially the Spawn stuff, like want Spawn stuff signed. So I try and make it as known as possible. Like if you even come near the convention center and see me, I will sign your stuff because I just don't do it a lot. And like it's
That's killer how huge Spawn. I think Spawn's bigger now than he was back when he came out in the 90s, you know what I mean? And like he was pretty big. I'm like surprised that they're not doing more video games and movies for it, like because like his comics are popping. I don't think he's been this popular in comics for a long time.
I don't know about games. I know they have a movie in development. I don't know at that point.
The Jamie Foxx one, Spawn's been, Todd's been talking about that for years. Like I hope it happens, man. Like I really want like more and better kind of image representation in live action, you know what I mean? Because like there's been some adaptations and some of them have been pretty good, but like some of them like the I guess like I'm not going to say it out loud, you know what I mean? It doesn't deserve to be talked about and it's not fair, but like there's been a couple that have been sad, you know what I mean, to see come out.
Yeah, it's the publishers and the creators of the comics have like nothing, like so little to nothing to do with. I mean, Todd will be a little bit different because he has so much. He's much more a guerrilla than a regular comic book writer would ever be.
And he's trying to produce it himself, right? He wants
he's producing stuff, so like he's got a lot more control than a regular writer. But most of the time, you know, stuff gets optioned and they never call you again. They're just like, yes, it's gonna be on screen. And you're like, I hope it's not fucking horrible.
Well, I mean, Johnny and I, like a lot of our favorite adaptations have the creators involved. Like they have them there as consultants and stuff. And
smartest way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, and a lot of the ones we have, and if you dig into it, you see they have the creators of the writers or whatever, whoever created it right there just to like shoot ideas off of. Like, obviously they're going to make some changes because it's a whole nother medium. But, you know, to make sure it stays within that the same vibe, the same spirit of the original. Yeah.
What's the core that made the story happen in the first place is usually pretty important. So it's always, I feel like it's always better when they're involved. Unfortunately, Hollywood is often like, nah, fuck them. We'll make it better without them. You're like, all right, I guess so. Weird decision.
Or you get the people that are so not creative. This did gangbusters. Let's make that into this without having to use that name, so we don't have to pay those actors, right? So, yeah, it's sad.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
So, do you have any other stuff out right now? You have we said the Spawn book and your Bear.
Yeah, Bear Pirate and Monolith. And then I don't know. I might take a hiatus for a little bit on comics.
Yeah, that's what you were saying, eh?
Yeah, before we were on air, I'm just kind of stepping back. I've done a lot of books in the past 5 years, 6 years, between Snakes and Bliss and King Spawn, Scorched, and all this shit. That I think I'm kind of stepping back and just going like, it's a multiple thing. Like, what's a book I really want to make, and also does it coexist with a book that like the market needs? You know, like I've always been really fascinated kind of with like Kirkman coming out with books that people needed. I think is like real, like, you know, comics kind of being in a really shitty place when Walking Dead comes out, and there's just like a simplicity and rawness to it that people gravitated to. And same with Invincible, like indie superheroes, not necessarily a huge thing when that book comes out, but like there's a hunger for it. And I think I'm just kind of trying to like listen a bit more right now, like just go like, where are we with this form? Like there's problems that everybody agrees on. There's a lot of great shit getting made, but also a lot of great stuff that like disappears because there's so much stuff and it's hard to hear.
It's get buried. Yeah, man. Like,
so I think that becomes a thing, is like the books take so much. And I think also the deeper I get into doing them, there's a responsibility I feel with the collaborators, is like, how do you make sure at the very least that they're getting treated well? We're early on when you're doing books, so like you're both kind of in it, and it feels very punk rock where you're like, I don't know, a door opened, like, do you want to sneak in with me? I don't know. We'll figure this out as we go. You know, everybody I know is getting older, and all the people I want to work with are getting older and have families, and it starts to become a thing like, all right, how do we do something we're super proud of, but also, you know, is viable?
Yeah, like you can put food on the table and pay your bills and keep the lights on.
I mean, there's a part of me that resists that, where I'm like, fuck it. But you're also but
you're not young without like a wife or a child that relies on like you holding up your end of the deal, right? So
yeah, and I think there's also a level of like, it gets heartbreaking. It gets hard and heartbreaking, right? Like to consistently come up with new, fully formed ideas that you're going to commit to for multiple years, and then have them end after 5 issues and have to have another one, right, that you're gearing up for and doing all. And also when you're doing indie books, you're doing basically most of the marketing. You're like doing most of the stuff, so it's tiring. Yeah, you know, like I said, like I think Above Snakes and Coyotes are both books where I was just like, oh. And there was moments where it almost looked like, oh, there's a chance that this could be a long run book like My Heroes did. And that would be a dream. It just gets kind of heartbreaking when you're like, yeah, Above Snakes makes all these end of year lists, and I wish we could do issue 6. Like, you know, kind of, and it's like maybe in a couple of years there'll be enough of an interest in it that like we'll redo it then. But then you're also hoping that everyone's schedules work out, and there's just so much to it. So yeah. So anyway, that's a long and convoluted answer to your question. Just kind of like.
But I mean, you have other avenues of creativity. So you'll step away from comics for a bit, take a little breather, and you go back to writing plays, do your own another production. I think you've worked on some TV stuff as well.
Yeah, I do some film and TV stuff. My background's in theater. So yeah, I mean, you've actually kind of nailed it. I've been talking with some people about doing some theater projects. I'm in the middle of working on a TV project. So, I mean, it gets done elsewhere, but I think especially with comics, I'm just kind of like, there's so many people doing great stuff. How do I make, I don't know. There's a part of me that I'm like, I'm past the point of wanting to make a comic just to make a comic, or just because I love it. And I don't know that the market needs that, of just like, hey, I love comics. Here's a comic. I sound like the same person.
But I get it, man. It's great that you have something that you can fall back on as a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Take a break so you don't get burnt out on one thing. So you can still be creative.
Yeah.
Keep those creative juices going, and then maybe while you're doing this, bang, it'll hit you because you'll do something that maybe doesn't work for a play, but you're like, fuck, that would be a great idea for a comic. So then, you come back to that. So, I mean, and I think you see that with a lot of creators now. They don't just focus on one like just, I do comics. Like we're talking about Patrick. He has a band. He has this. Other guys do.
You can't financially. It's like really hard to just focus on comics financially. Because even if you get a great gig, the nature of comics is that all gigs end, right? Like, I think some people don't realize that when they get a great gig, and then it's really heartbreaking. But like, it's the nature of it, right? Like every writer you love,
almost everybody we've interviewed has a day job, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, I think also it can keep you sane. I don't know if people acknowledge that as much, but I think sometimes a day job is actually a necessity because it does keep you grounded and sane in an otherwise somewhat insane profession.
Yeah.
I also got to say, it might not be an ongoing series, but I'd say Bear Pirate is a book that people need, the industry needs right now, dude. To tell you the truth, it's a breath of fresh air. I didn't know what to go into it. I kind of thought like, oh, Cowboy Ninja Viking, you know what I mean? Type of thing. And like I got into it, I'm like, oh, this is hard, man. This is brutal. This is some pretty Game of Thrones type shit, but like maybe better, you know what I mean? Like
I appreciate. I mean, I think the thing that drew me to is when I saw John's art, I was like, oh, I don't see anything like this in monthly comics. So it became really important in a lot of ways for me of like, how do we get this into on comic stands? Because the art style is so amazing, but it's so different, right? Like, so that it turns some people off. For some people, will draw them in. But again, like you were mentioning about Vertigo books, I just remember when I was a kid going to a comic book shop
and seeing that art, seeing like it looked like nothing
fucking crazy different. Every book looked wildly different, and I loved that of like picking up a TMNT book or picking up The Crow, like and just going like, oh, these all feel. And I loved all of them, right? Like I wasn't just like, this stuff's shit, and I only want the Marvel stuff, or Marvel shit, and I love like all of it was awesome. So.
So you mentioned John. You and John live kind of near one another, but how did you end up working together? Did you
accident?
This accident,
yeah. John did I was scrolling on Instagram and I got tagged. John did like an homage cover of Above Snakes just on his Instagram.
Okay,
he tagged me in it, and I saw it, and the painting was amazing. I was like, "This is fucking. Who are you?"
Who the fuck is this guy?
I'm like, who are you? I was just like, hey, this art's really amazing. And Jonathan was like, thanks, man. Like, if you ever get a chance, like, I'd love to work with you someday. Maybe we can get a coffee sometime. And I was just like, okay. And he was like, do you live in New York? And I was like, I do live in New York, but I live upstate. He's like, that's funny. I live upstate. And I was like, oh, I was like, okay, I live in this town. I named this town. He was like, no fucking way. I live in that town. And then I was like, actually, I lied because I don't like giving out where I live. I live in this other town right next to it. And he was like, holy shit, I live in the other town right next to it. I lied also.
Were you worried that he was a stalker at that point?
I don't fucking know, man. I'm so like, part of it is our town is super, super small. So like when like I named the town that's the bigger town that like the name of.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of it comes from that. When there was a short time where I did like 2 issues of Superman for Future State, and I got like people found my address and sent me mail about him not having a cape, and it did freak me out slightly. Like it was just a very
that DC hate, man, it's so good.
It was strange. Like as a father of a young son, getting an envelope at my house that was just like
it was set like physical mail.
It was physical mail.
Mail.
I got one piece of physical mail, and it was
holy
just
shit.
Put the fucking cape back on.
I could see how that would be like freaky, right? Everyone.
It was super. I mean, the internet makes everyone findable, but I was just kind of like, this is a lot of effort for like this response, and it never happened again. Like, so it was just one of those things where I was like, this is odd. And so yeah. So when I was talking to him, I was just like, yeah, I live in the big town. We can meet in the big town. But then,
then you're talking to him. He's like, yeah, did you get my letter?
Yeah.
He's like,
did you fix the cape yet?
Yeah, did you fix that cape yet?
Yeah,
motherfucker. Before you guys even know each other, you probably like bumped into each other at the coffee shop and spilled coffee and be like,
possible.
Fucking asshole.
Well, we had both just moved there. Like he had moved a month before me.
Okay.
I'd only been living there for 2 months.
Wow.
But yeah, if I look out my window right now, there's a soccer field between our houses.
Yeah.
So
damn, small world, eh? It's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. Super
crazy. Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great story, man.
Yeah, I feel, I think it's also one of those things of like, if an opportunity is put in front of you, you just kind of dive at it. Like his art was really good. So it was like,
oh yeah.
Fuck it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's other books I could do, but like, why not? Why wait? Why not just fucking make a book together? Yeah. But yeah.
Hey, it's definitely an interesting title. It definitely raises a lot of questions.
That's how the book started. Yeah. We went out because we didn't know each other. We went to a local brewery and I was just like, what do you like drawing? And he was like, bears are cool. Like I like drawing animals. I like Vikings. And I was like, okay. And he was like, pirates can be cool. The Queen wasn't part of it yet. And I was like, all right, bears, pirate. And it started that way. We're like, bear, pirate, Viking. I was like, that's a cool fucking title for a book. Like people would notice it.
How many beers in was this?
But then I was just like, let me go off and write. Like I'll make it make any sense.
Yeah.
And the book is what came out. That's kind of what it ended up being.
I even like the title, the font, everything. I mean, I like everything about it.
How long did it take you to come up with the story? Like, if you, man, you didn't have this kicking around before that conversation. Like, this whole thing like came out of that.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
No, I mean, that's where some of the magic of it comes. Of like, I got a pirate and he wants a pirate and a bear and a Viking. How the fuck are they in the same world? I'm like, all right, the pirate falls in the water and the bear swims to him. Who's the bear? Oh, I don't want to give. So, and then, there's things that start connecting later, but it's like,
how the pirates connected to the Queen, that part, you tackle that in the first issue. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you start going like, is the Viking connected to how are all these things overlaid?
Yeah.
So then it becomes like a fun puzzle. Like that's kind of how the writing became. It's just like a really fun puzzle. Like, okay, how do you do this? I mean, that's unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the writing I do is that way. Like it's very rare that the whole series has been written or solved by the time we're making the first issue. Like with Hayden and Caitlin, I had a book I had one book at Image, and then it was kind of the same thing. I was like, I think I can get us a book at Image. Like Eric seemed to like Saints a lot. And so here's a first issue. And I'd be like, I'm not really sure where the books go. But like if we start working on the first issue, we'll have something to show them. And I'll figure out more by the time we show it to them. So it's also a huge leap of faith on their part where I'm like, I think I'll figure it out and it'll work out and it'll be cool. I think part of that though is like, I don't know. I mean, there's probably some arrogance to it, but I've spent so many years, like I went to grad school for playwriting and was like playwright in residence at theaters for over a decade. So like writing that stuff. And then I wrote some stories for This American Life. I'd done a lot of writing in other forms where I think I felt comfortable of like, there's some structural things that I know that I'll know how to do when I run into it. And so we'll meet them when we get there. And it's worked out so far. I guess so.
Well, I mean, your body of work speaks for itself. So
it's a fun adventure, and they're amazing. Because like Hayden would say themselves, like one thing Hayden has even said is like, it's funny. Like the book we start out making is never the book we've made in the end, but it's always better. Like, he's like, I always like the idea when we first doing it, and I get the first couple of scripts, but where it ends, it's so different. And so
you're not completely rigid with your outline, or it's like an idea to work from, and it grows from there. So
because I mean, sometimes I do learn from the art, and I go, I want to do this thing, or sometimes I will say like Above Snakes is a really good example because like that's one where we got through. We had like I think almost all the issues done, and I knew something wasn't fully working, and none of those opening and closing monologues existed.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, if I write this to you, let me know if you think I'm crazy, but I think we need a showman. Because we're both into the idea of the medicine man.
Yeah.
I think we need a showman. I think we need him to do a performance. And bless Hayden. Hayden read it and was immediately like, this is going to make the book so much better. Like, and that's how that ended up coming into the book. But it was like a very late addition, but it honestly, I think it pays the book off better.
Yeah.
So that's also when you work with people a couple of times. I don't think I would never do that to somebody on the first book I was doing with them. We were in our third book and it became like, this is going to make the book special for people, I think.
Oh yeah, that was a good call, man. Like,
but yeah, so like I think sometimes not being rigid allows that, where it becomes like, and I think also not being rigid. I mean, I hope they feel the same. I mean, my hope is always that the artist feels like a very true partner in the book. So like at the same time, Caitlin at times would give me, like when we did Bliss, Caitlin gave me a great note before we started. I started sending scripts to Caitlin, and we'd already done Coyotes, which had a lot of violence and a lot of fights. And Kate was like, "Aren't you a playwright?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm also a playwright." She's like, "Could you just write some scenes where people talk? I would love to write some scenes where people talk." And there's like a scene in Bliss that's one of my favorite, where like the mom and the son. For people who don't know, it's about heavily about addiction and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. And like the mother and son are talking about the dad who's been out of their life for a long time and how they first met. And they're just sitting on a stoop, and you can see her memory as she's talking in the distance. And it's like her and the father dancing. Like that came out of Caitlin's note, right? Like Caitlin goes like, "Can you write a scene where it's just like them talking?" And it forces me to get out of what can sometimes be an easy cheat of like, oh, I'm going to show emotion through the fight, and it gives some to the reader. And in some ways it was helpful to go like, nah, be brave. Like, be brave. Let them just talk for a little bit. I was like, all right, I can try it. So I think like not being rigid is helpful, in that sense.
Yeah. Bliss definitely had that.
It's a quiet, it's a different. Yeah. I love a lot of Bliss.
It's hard to describe. Like when I
yeah.
Like when you try to like, you can't put it into one genre of like,
I think
real.
Because that's drama. Like
it's
like what he tried to do with Sucker Punch, man. But done, it's kind of what it reminds me of, but like in a way, you know what I mean. But like a lot smarter. But I don't know how you feel about Snyder, but like, yeah, I'm not trying to disrespect your stuff, but like I like the kind of the flow and like all the different styles that's in it, kind of.
Sure. I mean, I think sometimes that hurts me because I think it's very hard for retailers
to try to
like your career that way. Where like I have a lot of books that like they find their readership, but they're not necessarily huge right out the gate. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them make year-end lists, but it's like they're quiet because I think Bliss is a really fucking hard book to describe. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, so this guy who murdered tons of people, but he's kind of the hero. You're going to end up empathizing with him.
And it's an 8-issue story too, right? So it's hard to come up with a sales pitch, and then you're trying to sell 8 issues of it as well. Yeah. So it's like, yeah.
So crazy in that sense. Like there's frog people.
Yeah. The tortoise looking.
It'll make a lot of sense. The crime.
The elders, yeah.
There's a whole issue where they go to a rehab. Like you'll love it. You'll love this book.
Yeah. Oh, it's a great book. Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
People should definitely. I mean, you could pull any one of your books.
Oh, thanks.
Off a shelf, and there's something there in it for anyone and everyone to enjoy. I mean,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, like everything I showed covers of, like I highly recommend checking out, man. Like, I mean, I do have my favorites, but like they're all very good.
I appreciate that. I'm always amazed and thrilled that anyone is reading any of them. So.
Well, and like the neat thing, like you keep pointing out, is like you find these young brave voices, you know what I mean, and you help pull them up, you know what I mean, you like out of obscurity in some cases, you know what I mean, which is excellent, you know what I mean. I like that aspect of comic book creation. You know what I mean? And I like creators that do that. You know what I mean? Bring people up with them. I think that is a very awesome and noble thing to do.
I feel like with Caitlin and Hayden, I came up with them too. We were all kind of started at the same. I think that with that, it was just more of, it just seems so obvious that their work was incredible. So it was like, why aren't you already on books? Like, honestly, that was my response when I saw both. Is I was just like, you're fucking great. Like, why aren't you already drawing?
So when you saw Hayden's work, did you think post-apocalyptic, or did that come out of a conversation you guys had as well?
I saw with Hayden and with Caitlin, I saw those samples and I immediately, like, Hayden had these tall cityscapes, and like some faceless guys with like machine guns and a motorcycle. And I was like, I'm writing a story that it's kind of like Bear Pirate, right? Like a lot of times it's like, what do you like to draw? You know, like even on Bliss, that was our second book. We'd already done 8 issues of Coyotes, and Kate, the only stipulation Kate made, Kate was like, what are you going to make the book about? I was like, I'm not really sure. I think it's going to do with addiction and maybe forgiveness. I don't know. And Kate was like, well, can I have like animal people in it? And I was just yeah, I mean, yes, I want to work with you. So fuck, what am I going to say? No, like actually, it's a really interesting thing for me to figure out now.
Anthropomorphic animal people are fun to draw too. You know what
Absolutely. I mean? And it gives the book this kind of weirdness that allows something I'm doing seem plausible. Like there's a lot of implausible things that happen in Bliss for the theme of the book, right? Of like this huge trial, all these people died, and where you're gonna go. But it's like the rest of this world is also insane and kind of diseased. So like it actually makes you go like I buy that this will happen here. You know, like so you need stuff like a lot of times that's the gift the artist gives is you go like, oh, you just did a thing. Like Jonathan does stuff in Bear Pirate that, especially if we do another book together, I now understand it better with like negative space, like a character will just be negative.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's fucking awesome. And there's so much possibility with it that like, I think I use some of it, but I don't think
there's that one panel with the ship. And like you said, it was a reverse negative space, but it's a beautiful panel. It's so simple, so effective. I mean,
and it's also kind of an interesting commentary because it's like in that panel specifically, it's like, this poor bastard that the pirates are making like part of their scheme. He's the lowest level person and he actually has no body, right? Like he's literally just white space. I'm like, it's such a funny, there's such an interesting symbolic kind of activity going on there. Anyway, it's late and I'm getting like heady.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, if you look for a career change, I mean, you obviously have a great eye for talent because you found these people before they were really doing a lot of work. And for some reason you have that sense that I know they could pull it off. They could meet their deadlines, great talents. So
and
maybe
you're all stars now pretty much. Yeah.
So maybe that's in your future. Maybe you'll be calling the shots and, for a publisher or something,
Yeah. You find work for people like all of them. Like I'm always like hoping and looking at everything else they're doing. I'm always excited for them.
Everybody's doing like their own imprinted image right now. You got any ideas for that? Maybe like
not really. Oh. I should have ideas for that, but like that's a lot of books and a lot of coordination. I would have to, for me, I think it would have to be. I have a kernel of idea that I think could be cool for a universe, but also I'm either I don't know. There's also a part of me that when like a bunch of those types of things happen, my gut is always to not do it.
Yeah.
It's not a judgment on them doing it. I think it's super smart, and a lot of those books are amazing. Like I think those universes are great. I think.
You don't have to do a universe though. I mean, like the Ashley Wood one, he kind of just puts out his books and then other stuff that he likes. You know what I mean? Like he put out David Messina's 3 Keys and stuff. And
I mean, yes, I think like the type of thing Chris Rael's doing, like I would love to do, right? Where you just have this boutique imprint at Image, and it's like, hey, Jonathan's gonna do this book with this writer who I think is fucking amazing. Like, stuff like that would be super cool. Yeah. And trying to pair people, because that's also the thing is like getting the proper marriage of writer and artist, I think is huge. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because picking the right artist for the story can make or break a book, right?
Well,
If it doesn't have the proper tone,
and having a writer who can see how their story can benefit from this artist who they might not be what they originally thought was the art was like might not have been who they were thinking of originally.
Yeah.
I think it is a given a take on that. You know, I've seen how much the artists bring that I'm like, just back off the fucking artist. Like, just like give them more room to be them, like
to breathe and like express themselves.
100%, 100%. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And look, your books speak for themselves, man.
I appreciate it. Very nice of you to say. Very kind.
So the process works.
I think so. It does for me. I feel I'm very proud of the stuff I've gotten to make. So at this point, I feel like it works.
Yeah. Well, I don't have too many more questions. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to touch on, Johnny.
No.
No, not really, man. Like I've just been having a ball. You know what I mean? Like if Sean wants to keep on regaling us with the awesomeness of the industry, you know what I mean? Like this is a really good close look at a bigger league than we're used to talking to. So yeah, but like I don't really have anything in mind right now.
Gotcha.
So man, love talking to you. It was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. And man, best of luck with the rest of the series of Bear Pirate Viking Queen. I hope the numbers are there so you guys can keep working on that or other projects coming up. So
how long is that going to go for? Is it I thought it was a 3-shot, but
it's 3
It's 3 issues. Yeah, the last issue comes out next month. So yeah,
and they're all oversized, so it's still gonna be like a really nice trade. You know what I mean? Nice.
I think John told me the trade's 175 pages.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? On 3 issues, that European style, man. I love it.
It's insane. It's an insane.
So man, put out a hardcover for that one.
We're talking about it.
Yeah,
we want to. Yeah, we're figuring it out right now.
Good.
Like it's a book that deserves it. You know what I mean? Like
it's just insane. So like it feels like it should be on a coffee table. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
Of course, man. And yeah, you're welcome back anytime you would like.
Yeah,
man. Like,
this has been a joy.
All right. This has been a really cool look at Sean Lewis. We will be back. Joe, when is our next episode? It's really
Thursday. We're coming back with part 2 of the Sunday Spank, part 2 of our East of West read through. Yeah.
We're doing the Sunday Spank on Thursday. That's my fault. I had a mishap, and so but it should be really fun, man. So check us then, and until then, it takes all kinds, man, I suppose. Words of wisdom.
Yeah.